Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi Dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we're going to take a closer look at an important question that continues to shape discussions around Iraq's currency and its potential future direction. The focus of our analysis centers on the conditions inside Iraq and how those conditions relate to the country's long-standing objective of strengthening the value of its national currency by adjusting its exchange rate. When analysts talk about the Iraqi dinar and the possibility of exchange rate reform, they often return to the same foundational requirements: security, political stability, economic stability, and institutional readiness. The key question many observers ask is simple but significant. Does Iraq currently have the security and stability necessary to support a meaningful shift in its exchange rate policy? To understand this discussion, we first need to remember that exchange rate adjustments are rarely made in isolation. When a country decides to raise the value of its currency, that decision is typically the result of years of structural preparation. Central banks and governments must ensure that the broader environment can sustain such a change without creating instability in trade, inflation, or financial markets. In Iraq's case, the Central Bank of Iraq has historically taken a cautious and deliberate approach to currency management, focusing heavily on maintaining monetary stability while gradually implementing financial reforms. Security has always been one of the most critical factors influencing Iraq's economic trajectory. Over the past 2 decades, Iraq has faced numerous challenges, including conflict, political transitions, and security threats. However, in recent years there have been measurable improvements in the country's internal security situation compared to the highly volatile periods of the past. The defeat of major extremist territorial control several years ago marked a turning point, allowing the Iraqi government to begin shifting its focus toward economic rebuilding, infrastructure investment, and financial reform. While security conditions are not perfect, many international observers acknowledge that Iraq today is more stable than it was during the peak years of conflict. Major urban centers are functioning economically, government institutions are operating with greater consistency, and international companies are increasingly exploring investment opportunities in sectors such as energy, construction, telecommunications, and banking. These developments contribute to a broader environment that policymakers often view as necessary for long-term economic reform, including currency policy adjustments. Stability, however, extends beyond security alone. Political stability is another major component. Iraq's political system is complex and often requires coalition building among multiple parties and factions. Government formation and policy implementation can sometimes move slowly as a result. Despite these challenges, Iraq's political institutions have continued to function through elections, parliamentary negotiations, and constitutional processes. For investors and financial analysts, the continuation of institutional governance, even when it is slow or complicated, can still represent a form of stability compared to periods of institutional breakdown. Economic stability is another key element in the conversation about exchange rate changes. Iraq remains heavily dependent on oil exports, which generate the majority of government revenue and foreign currency reserves. When oil prices are strong, Iraq's fiscal position tends to improve significantly, allowing the government to invest in infrastructure, social programs, and economic diversification efforts. When oil prices decline, however, budgetary pressures can increase quickly. Over the past several years, Iraq has worked to strengthen its financial position by maintaining significant foreign currency reserves at the Central Bank of Iraq. These reserves are important because they provide the central bank with the ability to stabilize the currency, manage liquidity in the financial system, and defend the exchange rate if necessary. For any country considering adjustments to its exchange rate structure, strong reserves act as a financial safety net that helps maintain confidence in the currency. Another area that analysts often examine is Iraq's banking and financial sector reform. For decades, Iraq's financial system operated with limited modernization, but in recent years there have been ongoing efforts to digitize payments, strengthen regulatory oversight, and improve compliance with international financial standards. Initiatives related to electronic payments, banking transparency, and anti-money laundering frameworks have gradually been implemented with assistance from international organizations and financial institutions. These reforms may not always capture headlines, but they are essential to building the type of financial infrastructure that supports a stable currency environment. When international investors and global financial institutions evaluate a country's currency, they often look at the strength of its banking system, the transparency of its financial reporting, and the reliability of its regulatory framework. Improvements in these areas signal that a country is moving toward deeper integration with the global financial system. In addition to financial reforms, Iraq has also been working on economic diversification. Historically, the country's heavy reliance on oil revenue created vulnerabilities during periods of energy price volatility. To address this issue, policymakers have increasingly emphasized the development of non-oil sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, logistics, and technology services. Expanding these sectors not only creates jobs, but also strengthens the domestic economy, which in turn supports a more resilient national currency over the long term. Infrastructure development is another important piece of the puzzle. Large-scale projects involving transportation networks, electricity systems, ports, and industrial zones are gradually transforming parts of the Iraqi economy. Improved infrastructure helps facilitate trade, attract foreign direct investment, and increase productivity across multiple sectors. As these projects progress, they contribute to a broader economic foundation that can support long-term monetary stability. Despite these positive developments, it is also important to recognize that Iraq still faces several challenges that policymakers must manage carefully. Corruption, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and political disagreements can slow the pace of reform. Regional geopolitical tensions occasionally influence Iraq's economic environment as well. These realities remind us that economic transformation is rarely a smooth or linear process. For followers of the Iraqi Dinar, the conversation about security and stability often connects directly to speculation about exchange rate reform. However, it is essential to approach this topic with a balanced and analytical perspective. Exchange rate adjustments typically occur when a central bank determines that economic fundamentals support a new valuation framework. This decision involves detailed analysis of inflation trends, trade balances, fiscal policy, foreign reserves, and financial market stability. Short-term economic implications for Iraq currently revolve around maintaining currency stability while continuing structural reforms. The Central Bank of Iraq has consistently emphasized the importance of controlling inflation, regulating currency markets, and ensuring the smooth functioning of foreign exchange operations. Maintaining a stable exchange rate environment helps protect purchasing power and supports predictable business conditions within the country. In the near term, Iraq's focus is likely to remain on strengthening internal economic structures rather than making abrupt changes to its currency valuation. This includes improving government revenue management, expanding digital payment systems, strengthening tax collection mechanisms, and encouraging private sector growth. Each of these elements contributes to building a more diversified and sustainable economy. Over the long term, however, continued progress in security, political stability, and economic reform could create conditions that allow Iraq greater flexibility in its monetary policy. As non-oil sectors expand and financial institutions mature, the Iraqi economy may gradually develop the depth and resilience necessary for broader currency policy options. In global economic terms, stronger fundamentals often translate into stronger currencies over time, although the process can take many years. International partnerships also play a significant role in Iraq's economic future. Organizations such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have worked with Iraqi authorities to implement financial reform programs, improve fiscal discipline, and enhance transparency within government institutions. These collaborations provide technical expertise and policy guidance that can help accelerate economic modernization. Foreign investment is another factor that could influence Iraq's long-term currency outlook. When multinational companies invest in a country's energy sector, infrastructure projects, or manufacturing industries, they bring capital, technology, and employment opportunities. Increased investment can stimulate economic growth and expand the country's productive capacity. Over time, stronger economic output can support a more robust national currency. Energy policy will also remain central to Iraq's economic strategy. As one of the world's major oil producers, Iraq continues to hold significant influence within global energy markets. Efficient management of oil revenues, combined with strategic investment of those funds into development projects, will be critical for sustaining long-term economic progress. Many analysts emphasize that the key is not simply producing oil, but using the revenue effectively to build a diversified economy. Another area receiving growing attention is the digital transformation of Iraq's financial system. Digital banking services, mobile payments, and electronic government transactions are gradually expanding across the country. These innovations help reduce reliance on cash, increase financial transparency, and integrate Iraq's economy more closely with international financial networks. A modern digital financial ecosystem can strengthen confidence in the national currency and improve the efficiency of economic activity. Public confidence in economic institutions is also an important factor in currency stability. When citizens trust their banking system, government institutions, and monetary authorities, they are more likely to hold and transact in the national currency. Building this confidence requires consistent policy implementation, transparency, and reliable financial services. Over time, these elements help reinforce the credibility of a country's monetary system. For those following developments related to the Iraqi dinar, the key takeaway from today's discussion is that currency valuation is closely tied to the overall health of a nation's economy and institutions. Security and stability form the foundation upon which economic progress is built. Without them, significant monetary reforms become much more difficult to sustain. At the same time, progress in these areas tends to happen gradually rather than suddenly. Improvements in security conditions, institutional governance, infrastructure development, and financial sector reform accumulate over time. Each step forward strengthens the country's ability to manage its currency responsibly and maintain economic stability. Looking ahead, observers will continue monitoring several indicators when evaluating Iraq's economic trajectory. These include foreign reserve levels, inflation trends, fiscal policy discipline, non-oil economic growth, banking sector modernization, and the pace of infrastructure development. Together, these factors provide insight into whether Iraq's economic foundation is becoming stronger and more resilient. Ultimately, the question of whether Iraq currently has the security and stability needed for major exchange rate changes does not have a simple yes or no answer. Instead, it is part of an ongoing process of economic transformation. Some conditions have improved significantly compared to previous decades, while other challenges remain areas of active reform. Policymakers must balance these realities carefully when considering any adjustments to monetary policy. For Iraqi dinar followers, maintaining a realistic and informed perspective is essential. Economic reforms take time, and currency policy decisions are typically guided by complex data and long-term strategic planning, rather than speculation or short-term market sentiment. By focusing on credible information and verified developments, observers can better understand how Iraq's economy is evolving. As always, our goal on this channel is to provide responsible analysis that helps viewers understand the broader economic context behind Iraqi dinar discussions. If you want to stay informed with factual updates about Iraq's economy and currency developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And as a reminder, this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be considered financial advice, investment guidance, or a recommendation to buy or sell any currency. Always conduct your own research and consult with qualified financial professionals when making investment decisions.